go for the gender split.
I know, right? I feel like we're at a Christmas dance or something.
Hello. Is that
Okay. Bit of mental health on a wet Friday morning.
Who doesn't want to hear four people talk about being mad at 11 a.m. on a Friday?
Good. That's a bit threatening, but...
I know. Strapped
Anyway,
in.
good morning, everyone, and welcome to what should be a fascinating session. It's a panel on mental health at the Fringe. My name is Richard Holloway. It's my privilege to chair this session. And before we get to it, I want to say a few words about the organisation SANE, the mental health charity, because one of our panellists, Hanna Stanbridge at the end there, is supporting SANE through her show. SANE's main aims are to promote and host research into the causes and more effective treatments for mental illness, and to provide guidance and emotional support for people with mental health problems, their families and carers. It's got a campaign on the go at the moment called the Black Dog Campaign. That's what Churchill called his depression, the Black Dog. It's a pioneering program to give people a language in which to express their feelings of anxiety, depression, and other conditions and encourage them to seek help. According to the World Health Organization, depression is now the leading cause of ill health and disability throughout the world. And in the UK, at any one time, around 1 in 6 people are affected by a mental health condition. Given this scale of distress, it's encouraging, that's why this is encouraging, that mental health is now at the forefront of public and political attention. It's making a major contribution. What's making a major contribution to this is the fact that people are now outing themselves. They're being open about their own mental health problems, not least here at the Edinburgh Festival on the Fringe and in other venues. So important is the theme that a new award is being presented by the Mental Health Foundation at this year's Fringe in recognition of the show that most successfully explores the subject of mental health. They're probably all candidates for the prize. And that's where this event comes in. We've 4 speakers, each doing a show on the Fringe with a comedy slant on mental health. And I'd now like to introduce them to you, and then they're going to talk about their shows. Over in the far left is Hanna Stanbridge. Hanna is a BAFTA Scotland award-winning actress who's making her Fringe debut this year with her show, I Hate Myself So People Will Like Me, and Other Strategies for Success. Welcome, Hanna.
Thank you.
Daniella Isaacs is exploring clean living at this year's Fringe in her one-woman show called Hear Me Raw. It's on at the Underbelly.
Hello, thank you.
Richard Gadd, I think, starts tonight. He's the winner of the Comedy Award at last year's Fringe for his show Monkey See, Monkey Do, which The Guardian describes as a portrait of a consciousness in meltdown.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
And Carl Donnelly, who's performing his show The Nutter on the Bus at this year's Fringe, appropriately on a double-decker bus.
Yes.
We've got an hour on the show. It's being recorded, but we're not too tightly scheduled. And the plan is for each speaker to tell us something about their show, why they find it therapeutic, and why they brought it to the Fringe. Then we'll have a bit of a blether between us about all of that, and we'll allow at least 15 minutes for a Q&A from the floor. So we'll begin with Hanna to tell us about what she's doing, why she's doing it, and what it's like.
Hello. I'm doing I Hate Myself So People Will Like Me. It is the worst title to keep writing down to people. So first off, just do a shorter title next year, Hans. My show is about my own battle with anorexia, depression and anxiety. I kind of wanted to do the show for 4 or 5 years, but I didn't know. I'd never written anything before. I'm an actor, so I just turn up and say other people's words, and that's super easy. So, but it was something that was really important to me because when I was in my very early 20s, I'm now 31. I'm just being super honest now. I should have lied and said I'm still 25. But about 10 or 11 years ago, I became very ill with anorexia. I went down to about, at my worst, I was 5 stone, and I'm 5'7". So, and the doctors wanted to hospitalise me. I was of an age, so I said hell no, and I just went to like Portugal and stuff to get away, and it was quite literally the worst time of my life. So I wanted to turn that negative into a positive. And also I'm just winging this, I haven't prepared anything, but I started a little Twitter account when I was really ill, and I called it Secret Musings, and then I called myself the Anorexic, which I don't think I've told that to anyone. And I would write just how I was feeling, like, can't physically eat Christmas dinner today. And people would start messaging. Like I got one woman who was a mother who I ended up speaking to for a long time over direct message, and she was talking about how her daughter just keeps relapsing and relapsing, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's only 15. And the only saving grace with me was I was in my 20s, so my body had already formed. So when I was recovering, it just had to go back to where it was. But if you're 13, 14, 15, you could screw your body up permanently. And I just started thinking, I was like, well, I can't let that happen to anyone else, because that was literally the worst time in my entire life. And I felt like people weren't really talking about eating disorders, especially. I still find even now they're quite taboo. And I didn't know how else, I was like, maybe I should write a book. But then I have a publicist friend who was like, Hannah, no one's going to buy a book about anorexia, or the people that should buy a book about anorexia won't buy it because they either don't think they're ill or they don't want to read about it. So I was like, okay. And I'd just come off the back of doing a TV show here from BBC for River City, and I thought, why don't I use that? It's not fame, but I'm a bit known. So why don't I use that and try and get people, not just theatre audiences, but TV audiences and stuff, and really try and get everyone to see a show about anorexia. But the best way to do that, I think, is through comedy, because if people don't want to see something constantly horrific, and it is, and there are funny parts of it. Like there's silly I used to hide fat-free marshmallows under my bed, and when my boyfriend ate them, I used to have full-blown arguments with him. Like there's stupid things that happen. It's not all doom and gloom, and I think that it's important to show both sides, and for us to be able to talk about it, we should be laughing about it as well, because then it's just, everything's easier if you laugh. So, yeah, that's me.
Good. Daniella, well done. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm doing a show called Hear Me Raw, R-A-W, and it's about the obsession at the moment with clean living, meaning smoothies, exercise, all of that. If you pick up a phone on Instagram, it's everywhere. And about 4 years ago, I did a show that ended up going to Australia, and whilst I was in Australia, I kind of fell headfirst down what I now call like the wellness trap. I just became obsessed with eating right and moving the right way and kind of achieving a healthy, I guess, physical body that was kind of congratulated by everyone. And as I was kind of getting more and more into it, I didn't realize actually, it became my life, and I ended up by chance working for a wellness brand that has a base in Australia and London. They're one of the most well-known wellness brands, and my acting kind of went to the wayside, and it just became my life. And I started ghostwriting for this brand and writing recipes for them, and these guys have thousands of followers, and I'm sure everyone knows there's like wellness gurus everywhere now, particularly on social media, and as I was sitting in the office one day, I was still kind of auditioning and stuff. I was looking around and I was like, I won't swear, I was gonna, but I won't. I was like, this place is so dramatic because everyone here has to be happy all the time. That's the rule. Like, you have to smile and be glowy all the time. But you're all so sad and no one's talking about it. And I was with my friend Rosie, who directed Mush and Me, the show I did, and we were kind of talking about it. And I just said, this is a really dramatically interesting and really sad environment. And yeah, the office is the headquarters of wellness, but it's everywhere. And if young girls who aren't even stupid, because I wouldn't say I'm stupid and I totally fell for it, like are doing this, then we need to do something because I want to show that it's just like a filter and it's airbrushed and it's a load of crap. Sorry.
That's permitted.
I'm allowed to say that word. So I wanted to kind of like tear up this Instagram world and show what's going on underneath and make that mess a bit more acceptable. So I said, cool, let's start thinking of some characters and make a show. And Rosie was like, hell no, you're interesting because I think you've fallen in this. And I guess at the time when we had that initial conversation, I was aware I was obsessed, but I didn't realize how sick I was. And I don't think you do. Well, I didn't realize how sick I was until I was out of it. And I only really started to kind of come away from it through making this show. And yeah, I think that's actually a really helpful, useful thing to realize, that when you're doing something you really love, all those obsessions actually kind of fall down a bit. And I guess through the making of this show, we were also trying to understand like how anxiety, depression, OCD, all of those things kind of are intrinsically linked with this obsession to be well. And I guess that's what I found really interesting. So I listened to Rosie and I said, okay, well, we'll make this show. And yeah, Hear Me Roar is all about this obsession with wellness and I guess recoining the term wellness because I think it's been absolutely ruined by the wellness industry and it's become probably worse than the diet industry because it's kind of painted in like these candy-coloured phrases of empowerment. So you think you're actually doing a really good thing and I think that's really dangerous. But it's funny too, I promise.
All right, good. Motherfuckers in the house, make some noise. Sorry, sorry.
You've
Bloody
immediately
hell, right?
broken the BBC guidelines here.
Have I? Yeah,
We're
sorry.
off the air already.
Trust me, I mean, you took a gamble booking me. So, yeah, okay. Are we live somewhere, are we?
No, you're all right.
All right.
Technical.
That's
But
the-
they're
that's
rather
the-
having wee breakdowns in the background there.
That's it. Sorry, I was just the urge and the sort of when you're a comedian to sort of just break sort of any tension, just to sort of help you deal with your own head. Good. So I did a show called Monkey See, Monkey Do, which the Guardian described as a consciousness in a meltdown. A consciousness in a meltdown. So that was probably describing his own experiences watching the show. Deserve more. No, okay. All right. How do I mean, this is going to get pretty heavy, I suppose. But so I, God, how do I just tell him? All right. Okay. So I was sexually abused when I was younger. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's awkward. That's the pause. But I don't know how else to describe it. So I was, abused when I was younger, and that created a lot of mental neuroses and ideas of guilt and shame, and I don't know, issues of masculinity in me growing up. And I suppose I did a show about it. So the whole show sort of takes place inside my head, and you sort of see how what abuse can do to you, because it sort of plunged me in this world of sort of confusion in sort of every aspect. Sort of growing up as a man. You have ideas of what a man should be, and I never saw myself, growing up in Scotland, going to state school and all these things. I never thought that I'd be a man who ever ended up being sexually abused. You know what I mean? But for some reason, the environments around me meant that I battled out. I wasn't allowed to feel sad. I wasn't allowed to feel these sort of emotions that I was sort of feeling. And so the show's sort of all about that. It's about sort of trying to sort of get on with life, trying to live up to your masculinity, all the while sort of going through something like this. And doing the show was like sort of hugely therapeutic. I remember at the time, I used to sort of go out running, so I would never speak to anyone about it because it was it was a difficult thing. I was ashamed of it. Blame myself, obviously, because, you know, I was like, how could you put yourself in that situation? Fucking hell. But then, 2 swear words. Go on, let's keep them, let's keep that up. And so, good, broke a bit of tension at least. You know, so I would go out sort of running obsessively to sort of, because that was the only way I could sleep at night, as if I knackered myself. And so I'd do the whole show on a sort of treadmill. So I run about like 10 kilometers a show, which is nothing compared to the running I would do back in the day, because I'd run for miles and miles and miles. I remember one night running from sort of Frying Barnet to Wembley and back. I mean, I was just so I could sort of put my sort of neuroses to sort of sleep. So, and then doing the show was sort of therapeutic, because I guess it was during that was sort of the, just facing your fear, I suppose, can sometimes lead to freedom, I suppose, because if you tackle the things that you're most scared of and you learn to deal with them, and I mean, nothing's quite as scary as it is in your own head, I feel. And so I was sort of, I mean, I was sort of worried about what people would think. I spent my life worried about what people would think, and then, you know, God knows how many years later, all of a sudden everyone's like, you know, it's cool. They accepted it, and it just made me regret the fact that I never did it sooner. So, yeah, it was hugely therapeutic doing the show, and I suppose I never. It went quite well last year, and I suppose I never expected to go that well. And then, and I've been sort of doing it for the past year, and so I'm bringing it to Edinburgh this year, doing the last 10 shows, because it started in Edinburgh a year ago. Doing 10 more shows, start tonight, and then I'm gonna sort of. And it's been enough therapy for me that I'm going to call it a day at the end of the 10 shows, and then that's that, and then let something else define me. But you know, art has proved massively therapeutic in that respect. Yeah.
Good man.
Right. All right.
Hey. Carl.
I'm doing a show called The Nutter on the Bus, which is a bit more straight down the line. It's just what it is. I think I'm pretty much a straight stand-up, you know, in terms of I've always been just a storytelling, sort of observational type comedian, and I've always had issues, but I never really talked about it on stage until about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, when I just sort of thought, I sort of got basically. I never would show it. You'd never think it to look at me on stage. I was sort of off stage. I might have been a mess because, and I think part of that is because on stage is when I'm at my most comfortable and calm and confident. I don't think people get their head around that. They think you must be stressing out when you go on stage. But actually, it felt like the one time in a day I was in control. You know what I mean? I suddenly was in control of everything that was going on. So that was sort of why I never really took it on stage. I never needed to. That was sort of part of the day that was like an escape from everything else. And also your mind goes clear when you're on stage. It's lovely. Like, you know, the rest of the day's a mess. You walk on stage, it's just quiet all of a sudden. And about 4 or 5 years ago, sort of circumstances changed. And I went through quite a horrible breakup of a marriage. And, you know, I really went into a bad sort of 18 months or so where I was just, I was doing a lot of bad things to sort of self-medicate and all that. And then as I was doing it, I remember I did a show. The first time I ever mentioned it, basically, I wrote a show to come to the Edinburgh Fringe in 2013, and then the breakup happened like a month before the Fringe. So I didn't have time to rewrite a show. So for some reason, what I thought I'd do is I'd just try and do a show that in it I was still talking about being married. And it turns out that trying to do that when you're chronically depressed and manic creates a really funny show for the audience because they're watching you do a stand-up show that you definitely don't want to be doing. So it had this crazy manic vibe where I was basically a man dying on stage, and just now and again it was something would sneak out in a routine where I was trying to talk about it's bloody having an argument with your wife's a bloody nightmare, and it'd be like, and I think the audience could see that I was actually going through a breakdown, and it ended up being a successful show. Looking back, the actual material in the show I think was mostly bad. I think it was probably in the state of my life. It was one of the worst shows I think I ever wrote, but I think the actual way I did it was pretty excellent, so that got nominated for the award, and then I thought, oh right. And afterwards, once my life settled down over the next year a bit, I thought, right, maybe I can explore some of these things. That is, what is that noise? Right, that's rain. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not derision. It's the rain.
It's my ex-wife attacking the town. But yeah, so after the year after, I actually talked about the breakup, and I felt it was really cathartic. And the year after, I talked about. All right, I think we are under attack, guys. The heavens have opened.
Yeah.
Is that what happens
That's
when they're doing a real
rain.
show in here at night?
Yeah.
That's just end of the show. So yeah, year on year, I found as I became a bit more settled in my life, and I went through loads of therapy. I've done loads of stuff, and I'm off medication. I've been off medication for a while, and like this year's shows, it's weirdly, like what I've managed to do over the last few years, I think, is talk about it in a very silly way. So it's very accessible. Like, you don't come in and think, I'm not shouting at people or having a go at them, or sort of really. I think I'm bearing my soul, but in a very sneaky way. Like, some people who don't want to, watch somebody talk about their feelings, they could still enjoy it and walk out and think, oh, he was a funny man. But I think, the people that sort of are a bit more tuned into it will come away realising that I've sort of let out quite a few little secrets. And, I say some stuff about my family in this show I'm doing this year that are actually horrible. But I don't think you'd notice unless you're tuned in. So you might just find it quite funny to hear a person talk about their strained relationship with their parents and their family. And so yeah, mine is sort of a rolling thing. Every year I just do it. I've been doing it for about 4 years just because it got to a point where I felt like I had to. Yeah. So otherwise I would have actually lost the plot.
Can you actually? It must be quite difficult linking the fact that you're dealing with your own mental health problems through the medium of comedy. Can you explain how it actually works as a kind of therapy? Because you've all in a sense said that it actually helped you to do it. There's almost something evangelical about it. You're talking about it to the world, and it needs to be talked about, but it's actually helping you. Have you figured out, is it just because it's part of the talking cure, or do you get some of your demons out there? I mean, have you figured that out?
Well, I think it is just getting it out. I've said stuff on stage, and I've had friends in the crowd, friends from childhood, who I count as my best friends, and they've come up to me afterwards and sort of been like, I never knew that about you. So I find it easier to tell an audience stuff than I would tell a therapist or tell other sort of people that I know, because it's pressure, isn't it? You're all looking at us. Once people are staring at you and you've got a mic, you say things that you would never say in any other environment. It's just that sort of, it makes you just say, in the heat of the moment. Sometimes I'll say something on stage that I'll come off stage and think, I don't know where that came from, but it felt nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of exactly. It's sort of like getting out there, but also if you put it out, and when you do a show, you have to analyze how you feel about things. You have to put it on stage in a way where, and you get sort of instant feedback. So if you're putting something out there that you struggle with, and the audience are giving you positive feedback, then in a sense, they let you know that it's okay to feel this way. And I think as a result, that is hugely therapeutic. I mean, art has a sort of an ability to sort of make the mightiest themes seem sort of dwarfed. Do you know what I mean? Because the more you build something up in your head, the more extreme they become. So that if you get them out there into something else, and then you have people to share in that feeling with you, then instantly things become okay. I mean, I'd recommend anyone sort of do it, but yeah, I mean, I would. I mean, maybe not go to a paid venue because they shaft you, but go to the Free Fringe, have a great time, get some free therapy. But the overheads are extreme. It'd be cheaper going to a private therapist. No. Okay, yeah, it's just the process. If you keep, it's the same old adage. If you keep something bottled up, then things get worse, and then it's just, if you keep getting stuff out there, you keep analysing it, you keep putting it into something else, then things will improve. I guarantee.
Daniella, as well as being funny about the wellness thing, in a sense, you're targeting an industry. I mean, has it hit back at you? Have you been trolled? Have you had a hard time? Because, I mean, people are making money out of the stuff you're now poking fun at.
Yeah, I guess. Well, the scary thing is that I ghost wrote a book that's coming out in September, and I know it's real bad. And as I was being paid to do that, the idea kind of was growing in my mind, and my name was meant to be on the front of the book. And as I was kind of at the beginning of rehearsals for this show, I guess I was kind of learning and realizing that actually I'm really against this, and it's only through making the show that I started to realize that, and actually realized that I was suffering with orthorexia, which is what the show's about, which is an obsession with healthy living, and it's an eating disorder just like anorexia or bulimia, but it's kind of a new one. Through social media, I'd say that's probably the reason. Anyway, I guess I just came up to the boss that I was working for and I just said, look, I'm making this show. I was really honest with him the whole way through. And I said, we've spoken about this before. Orthorexia is a really scary illness and it's getting worse. And I want to speak up about it because I've had it and no one's really talking about it. And the person, who will remain nameless, said, yeah, of course, do the show, just don't mention me. And I was like, okay. So I said, but can you take my name off the book because I don't want to be associated with it, actually. And he said, or she said, yeah, no problem. And I haven't heard from them since, oddly enough. But I think you can't disagree with it because it's an illness and it's going on. And what's really tricky is that people are clever that are at the top of this wellness industry, meaning they know that it's going on. So what they do is pay lip service to orthorexia. At the same time, they sell protein powders and supplements that are going to be fat burning and make you thin. And so they'll never be ousted because they're on both sides of it. So whether you're one way or the other, you're going to listen to something. And they look pretty. And unfortunately, that still makes a difference. And so, no, I haven't been trolled. And if I was, I honestly wouldn't care. I'd probably be really happy about it.
Hanna, can you... this is maybe a dumb question, but it seems to me that a lot of very talented artistic people do have the kind of issues that you've talked about. I mean,
I think actually
is
that
they're more universal?
Mental health problems.
Yeah, it was really hard to pick these guys.
Cast the net. We're the only 4 guys. I think the whole festival is a mental health panel, to be honest.
Yeah. I think because it's I think that there are thousands upon thousands of people that aren't in the arts that feel the way we do as well. But I think that perhaps why we might be prone to it is because we don't have control in aspects of our life. Like, we're, as actors and comedians and stuff, we're constantly having to make our own work and constantly like, did we get that gig? No, we didn't get that gig. Can we do this audition? No, we can't. You're constantly, it's not like working in an office where if you do this kind of work, then you might get a promotion, then you might there's none of that. So you don't have any kind of control over what's going to happen. So you need control in something, or you only get validation if you guys are laughing. If you're not laughing, then we don't feel good about ourselves. So that... laugh. No, I'm joking.
So up your game, please. We're struggling here.
It is that thing. So I think that's maybe why we might be, like our, the arts might be prone to it as well. I think that it is just as rife, and I've had, and I'm sure we've all had people in our audiences that are definitely not actors or performers or writers or anything, who are, bank clerks and accountants and whatever else. But I think it's an issue. It tends to be issues with control or issues with if something's happened, and it's that could be why we're more as prone to it, I guess.
And say something about the kind of body image stuff, because it does relate to the wellness. There's a lot of stuff in our culture that's about appearance and it's not good enough. And I imagine a lot of kids on the screen all the time are feeling miserable because their best friends are... talk us through some of that stuff. We're actually creating worse conditions, aren't we?
100%. I think it's with people being able to look at Instagram just continually, looking at all these fantastic, beautiful people doing all these incredible things. How the heck, you can never live up to all these beautiful people. And it's like... women, men, everything, and that goes for masculinity and stuff as well. Like, we're shown these machismo men, and how you're supposed to act and how you're supposed to be all the time. You are never shown. And I don't like being, it's even like, so I'm diverse because I'm half Filipino. I'm diverse because I'm a woman, and I'm diverse because I'm over 30. I'm like... those are not diverse things. We're not diverse. Like, why can't we just all, because they always say, like, oh no, we should just show a wide variety of people. But we still don't show a wide variety of people in all walks of life. And if we turn on the screen and we just see just regular people all the time, if we just see normal people in but I don't know how to stop that. I don't know how that would ever go away because unfortunately we are programmed somehow through whatever, how it used to be the beautiful curvy woman to, and the big massive man to like more the geek chic look and all this. Whatever it is, we are prone to liking that more. And I don't know how to get that out of our psyches to going, that's beautiful, that's not beautiful. I don't know.
Daniella?
I just think, like I said, Instagram is making things 10,000 times worse. As I was making the show, I sat down with the amazing psychotherapist called Susie Orbach. If you haven't read her book, it's seriously good. It's called Fat is a Feminist Issue. Anyway, she said, unfortunately, and I hate being kind of ultra negative, but it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the only way that we can change these things is through exposure and kind of making sure that people at the top are showing all different types of body shapes and things like that, and speaking up about their mental health and showing that it's not just about how you look, but it's about, more importantly, how you're thinking and kind of speaking up about that. And I guess the only other thing that I should definitely say is that having been at the top of the wellness industry and having tried to do it myself and having a really kind of Instagram definition fitspiration version of a body, it's so lonely, it's so boring. I lost my periods. It's just a load of crap. Sorry, no one's happy. Everyone's really lonely. All they're doing is thinking all the time about what they're putting in their mouth. I meant food, sorry. And how often they're moving. Sorry. And it's just so lonely. So stop following Instagram Carl, go through all of them. They're lonely, they're unwell, a lot of them. Sorry, that's so unfair because some people aren't.
It sounds like a cult.
It's a cult, it's a
like
religion.
Yeah.
It is a religion.
Yeah.
And I just realised I spoke for the whole of the wellness world, and that's not fair at all because I'm sure there are some very happy people. But I just mean on the whole, it's a really intimidating world to look at when you're scrolling through your phone, and it's really easy to compare and beat yourself up. But having seen it from the people that are doing those, aspiring Instagram feeds, I can tell you they're not very happy and they're very lonely, lots of them. So
just quickly, I just discovered, because Carl's girlfriend Hannah directed my show, Hannah Norris, wonderful director, producer, actor as well. When we were doing my show, we were looking through, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but there is stuff on Twitter and Instagram that are it's called pro Anna, and it's pro anorexia photos and all these tiny girls who are severe, terrifyingly skinny, and everyone's going, "You're so beautiful, you're so this." And the weird thing about Instagram is if I search on Instagram and do #ProAnna, the first thing that pops up is maybe you should speak to someone. There's all these helplines, which is great. On Twitter, there's none of that, which is interesting as well, because maybe they should be closing all those down.
One last thing. I'd just say the scary thing about orthorexia is that it's not you can look very normal, but you can be very unwell. So I don't think that it's about weight at all anymore. It's just about how much of your mind is consumed with your physical appearance. So,
Richard.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I don't really social media very much. But I reckon the pressures on
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't. I think the pressures on young people must be insane growing up. I mean, is it not 1 in every 3 children between the ages of 8 and upwards have a phone now or something like that, mad? And I can imagine Googling things and holding a barometer up to yourself constantly must be a real pressure growing up. I seeing, because there's a quote by Tom Gill, an amazing sort of beat poet or something, who says the reason they call it a profile is you can only see one side. So, but people, they pay attention to that. This is the life they should be leading, and I just can't imagine what it must be like growing up.
Well, what about the male macho kind of thing? Did that? I mean, how did that hit you, or didn't it? I mean, you're a big
I think
guy.
It hit me just sort of going to a sort of state school where there was tough characters and just having to sort of keep your head down a little bit. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I love school. I managed to learn how to keep my head down quite well, not in a sort of devious way, but yeah. I mean, the pressures growing up are huge. I mean, Yeah, I mean, I thank God I grew up with a Nokia 3310, and like the highest level of excitement was following a line that followed a ball around a screen. You know, that was about as intense as it got. I mean, I think Bebo came into effect just as I went off to uni, and that was probably a gentler version of social media than we have now. And I have probably lost the trail of the question. Actually, what was the original?
But it's partly body, partly kind of
Yeah.
being imaged out of your own reality. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's particularly bad maybe for women, but it's tough for men as well. This false macho kind of being a big strong guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Carl, you touched a wee
I've
bit
talked about
that.
it a bit.
Yeah.
I did a show a couple of years ago where I weirdly talked about my body issues because I got diagnosed with a thing in my teens called Gynecomastia, which happens to a lot of teenage boys, but you normally grow out of it by the end of puberty. And it's basically it's clinical man boobs, if you want to give it a sort of silly title.
Yeah.
But it's basically I've got too much estrogen in my body, and it means I've got very puffy nipples, which is it's funny as well as, but it's also very traumatic if you're a 14-year-old boy with massive nipples. And but you're meant to grow out of it, and it genuinely was the bane of my existence. It meant.
Yeah.
You know, I basically developed in my teens a chronic fear of anyone ever seeing me in any way naked or topless, and that went into sort of intimacy, into my adulthood, and you know, it's horror. And but I never grew out of it, so I've still got it. So I've just had to learn to just deal with it, and I never did. But a couple of years ago, I thought I would just talk about it in the show, and it was great. Like, I talked about how the fact that even now, like, I still wouldn't. I'd never go on stage in just a t-shirt because in the back of my mind, it's still always, well, everyone will just be staring at your nipples, which is such a stupid anxiety to have. But I know it's always going to be there. But I did a show where I talked about it as part of the show, and then I ended every show for the month of Edinburgh topless. And in the heat of an Edinburgh room, they really do puff up as well. So it was a very silly way of me trying to talk about it and make people understand that there are some men have body issues.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying it's definitely not as common as it is with women. I think that is the nature of sort of your Instagram and your Twitter and just the inundation of like images. I think men are, you know, it has grown, but I don't think it would take another 1,000 years before it even got on the same level, I think. But the fact I just wanted to say that, you know, some of us are blighted with it, but I thought it'd be a silly way of trying to sort of deal with it, and it actually did help. To be honest, by the end of the month, like I'd say the first 2 weeks of the run, every time I got to that point of the show was horrendous. Like I was sort of really hesitant to just get topless. It's such a silly thing to think, but by the end of the run, you know, I wasn't whipping it off and dancing around, but I definitely was much more confident in doing it. And I think since then it has really helped just to make it silly in my mind, I suppose, has helped.
I mean, school locker rooms and
It was a nightmare.
all of that. God,
Yeah.
it must. Oh,
I said in the show how I could get... Huh?
I've never noticed your nipples.
I don't just walk around with them out, Hannah.
Even in a t-shirt. I've
But
never
yeah,
seen
I
that.
very rarely am, you know, seen topless. But at school, I talked about it in the show how I developed loads of coping mechanisms to get from like changing rooms to swimming pools. I told a bit in the show about how like I would always tell people I'd meet them in the pool. I'd never like walk to the pool with friends. I'd always have to find like an alternative route. I'd say like they'd be in the pool and I'd appear like out of the water, like the Viet Cong or something.
yeah.
But yeah, it was weird. I just had to just do. There was ways I used to like get cold water and throw them on my nipples. That would make them shrink a bit, and then I'd run into the pool before they started growing again. And it's I can laugh about it now because I've talked about it enough on stage, but it was horrible, wasn't it? Yeah. So that was a weird sort of male body issue that I don't think anyone else I've never heard talk about on stage, but I did, which was fun.
When I was in the army, one of the guys in my troop had complete bodily alopecia, and he had to have special bathing arrangements because he got ragged by the soldiers. That's another one of these body image things. That's another terrible one to deal with. I'm going to open it to the floor, and I just want to say I think you guys are all very brave to do this. Thank you for doing it. Don't you agree? Yeah. We've got about 20 minutes. I hope I can see you. Anyone want to ask a question, raise a point? I think we've got a mic, have we, or do you shout them out? No. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Who's coming in first? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, come.
I've got a question, I think, for...
There's a mic there. Can you wait for the mic, please? Yeah.
I've got a question for Danny and Hannah, I think, in particular. I'm a secondary school teacher, and so there's obviously there are a lot of mental health issues ongoing, but there's also a balance between encouraging healthy lifestyle and healthy living. And so is it what we're saying is that the most important thing is to have a sound mental state and be happy in who you are, and so therefore that will hopefully encourage a healthy physical being as well? I don't know if you could sort of help shed some light on that for us.
Hi. I think absolutely. If you've got, I guess if you like yourself, you're going to do kind things to yourself. And so being kind to yourself truly, in like the truest sense of the word, because that phrase has really been ruined as well by the wellness industry, because they'll often say be kind to yourself and then, I don't know, go and eat no carbs for the next 6 months by being kind to yourself. So if you're truly kind to yourself, then you're going to do nice things to your body, and that should therefore make you feel good, meaning of you'll walk your body, you'll eat food that makes you feel good. So yeah, I think it does all start with your mind. And I just think that giving rules and like, I don't know, regimes for wellness or health, we're so different. I know this is such a girly way of saying it, but like my makeup bag is very different to what's in your makeup bag. Yeah. So like there's no way that if someone prescribes a set of rules that it's going to fit to all of us. So if we're all learning to be truly kind to ourselves, then that should therefore affect your physical health, and your mental health will already be looked after, I think. And I think a way of encouraging that is getting people to talk about the mess. So talking about the voices in their heads, particularly at school, and making that a norm rather than hiding it away and covering it up with, like I said, a filter on Instagram and making out you're perfect. Let's try and make that uncool. I know that's really hard, so good luck to you, sir.
I've actually had a few teachers in my show who've spoken to me afterwards, and I think, and this is probably for if you do have a kid that's already maybe going down that road, but people have asked me before, like, what's the best way? Like, how do you broach that? Who do you speak? Like, how do you speak to them? Like, because I always got people used just to be like, well, just eat, Hannah. Just eat. Just eat. I'm like, I can't. It's not stubbornness. It is genuinely not a choice. It's just so. Doing anything that's almost like a do this, do that is not the way to speak to a kid, a child, a boy, a girl who is of a young age, who will just go, no then, well, if you're telling me to do this thing, I'm not going to do that thing. Just saying you're going to be there and just be like, look, I know there's something wrong, but I'm here, and just whenever you're ready to talk, I'm cool. And that was genuinely what one of my friends said to me, and it was the only person that I went and spoke to at the start. Mm-hmm. Because there was no challenge, there was no nothing. It's noticing the little signs, like there's little things I do in my show, like I constantly, and I even still do it now, I genuinely have 2 naked bars in my bag, so if I ever get hungry, I've got a healthy snack. But if, a teacher was saying that I do this thing where I'm like, I keep pulling out my bum bag. I'm like, I've got this naked bar, I'm about to eat, I'm cool. And he said that's so weird because a bunch of girls he knows, every lunchtime he sees them and he's like, have you had lunch? And they're like, no, sir, we've got this thing in our bag. And they never eat lunch. And now he's like, oh, warning sign, warning sign. But, when you see those warning signs, it's just going and just checking in with them, being cool, nothing upfronting, or you can't tell them. They're never, until you know you're not well, or until you can only just be there for someone. So I think it's just going, yeah, and making fun of it, making light of it. Because if it's not that big a deal, then we can all talk about it easier. I guess. Maybe.
Can I ask about, again, it's the kind of male angle. I mean, I know a young girl in high school who has a monobrow. And a young guy in the corridor in school commented on it. And she went home devastated and then started kind of doing stuff to her eyebrows. So there is a sense in which I think there's particular pressure on women, isn't there? And or am I, as a man, over-egging this? I mean, it's part of the appearance thing again. I mean, it clearly hits men too.
I mean, but teenagers are arseholes.
Horrible.
Also, it's sort of
And
not. I don't mean that in all, but
Yeah, they are.
the teachers are like,
Yeah.
yes, they are. No, but I mean, what I mean is it is the part of this. I think sometimes, that we're quick to sort of. I think there is a lot of when you're a teenager, everyone sort of puts everything on everyone else. It's like it's a natural state of like bullying, isn't it? That's what.
Yeah.
So I think that is. I wouldn't say it's always. We shouldn't link it all to mental health problems. Some of it is just the horrible nature of humans growing
I think
from
kids are just
young
always going to be
adult.
like that. I don't think there's any way. I don't think that's
Yeah,
society. I
I
think
don't
kids
think we
have
can
always
stop
been
it.
mean to each other at that age, and girls have been mean to boys, and boys have been mean to girls because they're just figuring out what girls and boys are and stuff. So I don't think. I don't. For me, I don't personally see a link. But I used to get slagged off because I had really straight eyelashes. I do not have an eyelash. I don't just show my eyelashes off at the end of my show, guys. Just Asian hair. That's what it is. But yeah, I don't. I think kids are going to go through stuff.
Yeah.
That's not what makes kids these days. For me, I don't think not always what makes them ill. It is those having the ability to then go on Instagram and go, oh, I have a monobrow. Oh, look at these phenomenal, beautiful women.
It used to just be a bit of teenage
banter.
I suppose it is bullying, but
Yeah.
if it's very contained and small and it's a very sort of short period of time. But I suppose what we've given children is sort of 24-hour bullying online. So they're having that, and then they don't get the release of it of the rest of their day. So the moment they see everything else, it's almost like subliminal bullying. So I think that's much more insidious what's going on online than a bit of chat.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it can change. I think, yes, it's really rubbish that, we do expect that to be the case at school, but I think it's about exposure again. So, the books we read, the toys we get, all of those things absolutely play into the stigma that we have as young boys and girls that then become men and women. So, any toy makers out there, stop making toys that appeal to everyone and that don't get... Do you know what I mean? We can change the conversation from right at the beginning and...
Did you follow the thing that happened up here? I mean, someone made shoes and the First Minister jumped in on it. They made a special... Oh, yeah. Anyone know the story? Yeah. Tell us about it. What was it? I mean, I only just caught a wee hint of it. Who was the shoe manufacturer? What did they do?
It was Clark's, wasn't it? The girl's shoe was Princess or something. And the man's shoe was Leader.
Oh, I see.
Leader?
Or something like that. It was horrible.
No.
Really bad.
Clark's.
Yeah.
But they've had to withdraw them, I guess, right? Yeah. Anyone else want to come in out there? Yes, someone up there. Thank you. Wait for the mic. Thank you.
Hi. As a fellow actor and writer, I just want to say how inspiring this morning has been. I think the four of you are absolutely, just brilliant in making the work and then coming and continuing the conversation outside of the stage and your character and speaking about these realities to us directly. I think it's absolutely fantastic. My question is, I suppose, when you're performing, especially if you're doing comedy, there can sometimes be, I know this is true for myself, that this sort of disconnect when you're performing. So the head's be funny, oh, the audience, oh, me, oh, someone. There's a sort of a separation within your identity on that stage sometimes. And I love the idea that all of you are posing that these shows have been therapeutic for you. And I wondered if there was a specific moment for each of you when the head and the experience and your journey had all sort of fused together and you get that magic moment where you're like, yes, I'm in this, and this has been a transformative thing rather than just la 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 in your head.
Great question.
Yeah. No,
Richard, come on in.
Well, that's sort of the moment we strive for when we're doing comedy. That sort of in the moment, everyone sort of understands you, everyone sort of gets you, sort of moment. That's the moment we sort of strive for. But the majority, just because I was doing a show the show that I'm doing right now is sort of doing a show about voices inside your head, and behind that, there's a voice inside my head being I wish these bastards would give me some more. Excuse me, I'm not obviously referencing you guys, but. It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's a subliminal thing. I've genuinely been doing a show and been on autopilot, but then not autopilot, but underneath that, I'm thinking about flaying them all alive. but no, you sort of strive for the sort of, because that's what because as you say, when you go on stage, it's sort of like everything comes into a single consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you strive for. I think there's a moment. There's nothing sort of when you're in the moment, as when you're acting and stuff like that. The scenes where you do the best are when you're not having that voice inside your head saying that, oh, that line was wrong, or I said that wrong, or I did that bit wrong. And so the best shows you ever do are when almost like you sort of forget yourself and you do just exist in that single consciousness. And I find that very difficult. And the only times I do achieve that are when I'm on stage. And I think that's probably why I do it.
Carl, you want to come in?
I know. I was saying it's exactly like, it's quite weird when you're doing a show that is very personal, and you have an off night, and you're all on the same, or like sort of a different wavelength, because then you just feel self-indulgent essentially. It feels like you're just using them for your own good. And you can feel like, it's not very, very rare, but I've seen people that have seen me over the Fringe over the years. Like, you've probably seen me shows 8 years ago when I was quite new, and I was all just giddy and telling funny stories about, oh, I bloody got in the wrong car, whatever, just like, and it was just fun. It was just fun. There was no depth to it at all, and they really enjoyed it. And they've probably seen me over the years develop. And now, like, I had one guy come up to me, and a couple of years ago after I did a very personal show, and he said, I enjoyed it, but I did prefer you when you were just funny. So it was like, it's a price you pay for letting it out there. Some people will really enjoy watching that, and they'll actually much prefer, but because the heights I think you can get to with an audience with just being funny, just doing a joke or just doing a funny story. There's a glass ceiling of like, we can all have a laugh together, but there is somewhere beyond that you can get to once you get into a personal thing. And like, just throughout there's moments like, in that show where I sort of got my top off, and for the people that had fully invested in me from that show, and when I talked about a lot of other anxieties and issues and depression. And the nipples thing was like almost a little respite in that show of being silly about something that's sort of a real anxiety that has been troubling throughout my whole life, but now I'm dealing with it, and I'm finally, I think, put it behind me. But there was moments during that run where that bit at the end where there was this sort of like, right, I'm gonna get my top off, and you could feel in the room a sort of like, oh, is he actually going to do this? And then there was nights where they could see how nervous I was to do it, and when I took it off, it wasn't a sort of a pity of, well done. There was nights where it was a group sort of almost hysteria of like, bloody hell. And you can't really get to that feeling just by doing a joke or something. So then moments are when you suddenly feel like you've hit some sort of nerve that as a performer and as an audience and everything, it just felt like you've created a little moment that was really profound for me, I think.
Daniella?
I'm really pleased you asked that question because I've always had this thing called depersonalization, which is where you feel like kind of out of body, and I had it a lot growing up, and a lot of the show actually is about that. And often I get when I'm on stage, I have a voice in my head being like, you're going to die, Daniella, this is your moment, you're going to die, you need to leave the stage. And it's going on and on as I'm speaking lines, and thankfully, I've never walked off the stage, but each time that happens, I'm like, this is it, guys, I'm dead. And it happened a few times in this show, but I guess what's different about this one is that the show is about that. So if I connect to that and also really connect with the audience as well and be like, hey, I want you to know what's going on in here so we all can share it together. And if you feel like that too, then that's great. That's kind of what's got me through. So even if I guess it's learning to not be scared of those voices, which is the point of I like a lot of these shows. But if you kind of have to listen to your own message that you're saying to other people. And sometimes that's really hard to do as a performer. And I guess that's also really important to say that although, we're all talking about these issues, it doesn't mean they're over. And I think there's a trend at the moment to talk about mental health as like, 2 years ago I had this thing called depression and I'm really well now. But like, actually, no one's really well. And like, that's normal. So if we all just talk about that, and I still get voices in my head, but I'm still doing a show and it's going all right. And that's great. Like, let's all do that. And yes, so thanks for asking the question.
That's a great point. Hannah, do you want to follow up with
it? Just on that point, actually, I specifically say in my show as well, I say, like real life isn't like a neat little bow, like a film. Like, the worst kinds of films are when they're based on a true story, because they don't have an ending. And you're like, so, it's definitely an ongoing thing. But I think for me, this has been particularly scary because I've never been seen as a comedy actress before. I never get auditions for comedy. I never do anything. And I'm funny, right? Which is ridiculous. But anyway, changing everyone's minds, it's fine. But it's been really scary because I guess I don't know what's funny. Like, you know, a lot of you have been doing your craft for years and know what's funny and what works and how to say a joke and what, you know. And so for the first few shows, all I had in the back of, because I do voices in my head as well as a show, as the character, but then I had voices in my head going, yeah, you're not funny, Hannah. Oh my God, this is the funny bit. Make sure they laughed. Oh, they didn't laugh. Like it was horrible. And then it just got to a point where I was like, no, I'm doing this for like, it's not I shouldn't, because I've been very lucky and I can, normally I do find when I'm doing drama that I get into that thing where I'm not even aware of myself and I come off stage and I'm like, what the hell happened? Oh, I just finished that show. So comedy, I was like, stop separating these two things. This is just me trying to tell a story. And now I've got to a point where I'm actually like, sometimes when I get complete silence, I can tell, because there's points in the show where it's quite horrible and quite hard to watch of what I'm doing. But I can tell when an audience are silent because they're so with me compared to an audience that are silent, that are like, what the hell is she doing on stage? And that's really, and there's something really kind of comforting in just going, stop, this is just your life. You're just selling some stuff. You're saying some stuff. You're not selling anything. I'm not in the wellness industry, guys. But so just relax. And also it's quite nice because then it kind of works, because if I've just got tons of voices going on in my head, then it's probably just going to make the show better anyway. But yes, I think it's just trying to just relax and just let the audience, again, it's control. It's like I've got no control over you guys. I can't say, laugh here, please. And that's, you don't want that as well, because that's just uncomfortable for everyone. Just please laugh. But yeah, so it's really interesting to finally come to that. I'm still nervous. I'm definitely always still nervous before I go on, but it's nice to have a bit more relief and release.
We've got a few minutes left. Any quick final reflections from anyone before we...
I don't think Man United are quite the team they once were. Sorry, I don't have anything other than that. Final reflections. I regret saying that Man U joke now, because I feel like I have to now be serious again.
You can be seriously funny.
Yeah. 11 p.m. Summer Hall, 18th to the 27th. Yeah. You sort of shook your head back there, so being like, "Oh my bollocks, going to that." Just stay off social media.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Come on. Woo! Yeah.
Or put things on social media that are being really honest, and then we can start to change social media. Because social media social media can be really good if we're all talking about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't buy shoes from
Or
Clark's.
follow me at Carl Donnelly. But I am actually on social media, but I just don't tend to check too often. Do what I do. Be on there, put stuff, but don't read anyone else's, which I think is probably bad, but it's the way I cope.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've also got out of this great event this morning is there is no normality. I mean, humanity is a crisis. We're weird creatures, you know. We're animals with minds and self-consciousness. So we're always going to be disturbed by lots of things. Let's own that and accept that we're all. I'm almost tempted to use the F word there, but I'll never get back on the BBC if I do. But we're all mucked up. But let's celebrate it and love one another and be kind. So thank you very much for a wonderful night. Yeah. And that's the end of the show. Yeah, good. Thank you.